Hi, I'm Mariah Salazar. Welcome to Using the lead Service Line Inventory Solution webinar. Let's get started. Today's presenters include Howard Crothers and Alex Kabak. Howard manages the Esri team building solutions for water, wastewater, and stormwater. He has over 25 years of experience using GIS to support water utilities. Alex is a project engineer on the Pipeline Solutions team with a focus on water, wastewater, and stormwater industries. He has 7 years of experience in the water industry and has been with Esri for 4 years. Howard, I'll pass it to you to get us started.
Thanks, Mariah. So real briefly, the topics we're going to cover today are a very brief introduction to ArcGIS Solutions if you're not familiar with them, and then we'll segue into the importance of lead service inventories and talk about some common challenges that water utilities face in doing lead service inventories. We'll then talk about the freely available Esri solution and how that helps overcome those challenges. Alex will demonstrate the solution to you. We'll then share some tips and some things to think about when using the solution. Alex will then show you how to deploy the solution and talk a little bit about data loading if you have existing data, and then we'll end by answering your questions. So first off, if you're unfamiliar with ArcGIS Solutions, and that's the Esri team that Alex and I are both part of, they're freely available industry-specific ArcGIS configurations. So the lead service line inventory solution that we're focusing on today is one of these freely available ArcGIS configurations. So if you have ArcGIS licensing, you're just able to take these configurations and deploy them at no additional cost to your organization. Also, all of our ArcGIS solutions are fully supported. So you're able to call Esri technical support and get support on any of our solutions. We have over 100 solutions available today across a variety of industries, including water, wastewater, and stormwater. And you can just go to solutions.esri.com to see all of the available ArcGIS solutions. So let's now focus on today's topic. The dangers of exposure to lead have been known for years, and one of the ways that you can be exposed to lead is through drinking water. It's estimated that there's between 6 and 10 million US homes today that have lead service lines. Now, if you don't know what a water service line is, it's the pipe that connects a water main to a customer. So the customer could be a residence, it could be a commercial building, or maybe a school or something like that. And when those service lines have a lead material or have fittings in them that are lead can leach out of those of the material and into the drinking water in the service line. Now, the danger of lead service lines and really the need to replace them has been known for years. And there have been a lot of small utilities that have wanted to tackle this problem, but haven't had a good way to manage the information, and also haven't had the funding available to tackle it, especially when when the service line is lead on the customer side. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes and what that means. There's also been a number of large utilities that have deferred replacement activities in favor of testing and sampling and customer notification. Now, the replacement of lead service lines is absolutely necessary for communities to reduce exposure to lead in drinking water. It's really the best way across an entire community to safeguard the community as a whole from lead exposure. And there is a new EPA lead and copper rule revision, and that's commonly referred to as the LCRR, that makes identifying and removing these lead service lines a priority for all utilities. So, if you will, it closes the loopholes and around the old regulations about lead service lines, and it really provides some very firm guidance on how to manage them going forward and the need to inventory them. So I just want to share a few highlights of the LCRR specific to lead service lines. If you take the time to read the LCRR, it is a few hundred pages, and it's very comprehensive. It includes regulations and rules around sampling, around customer notification, around replacement activities depending on lead thresholds in your community, and corrosion control activities. But our solution and our focus today is around lead service lines. And it's our current understanding of the rules that by October 16th, 2024, all water systems must create an inventory of lead service lines or be able to demonstrate the absence of lead service lines. Now that lead service line inventory must be updated at a minimum annually, but as you see Alex demonstrate the solution, you'll see the importance and really the ease of keeping that inventory up to date in real time. The LCRR also requires that that lead service line inventory be made publicly available with location identifiers, meaning that the community can look at that information and understand where in the community these lead service lines are. It can be shared as a list, a table, or a map. Obviously, at Esri, we believe a map is by far the most efficient way and impactful way to share this information out with your community. If you're a water system that serves over 50,000 people, you're required to put your lead service line inventory on your website. If you serve under 50,000, you can put it on your website or make it available for review at the utilities office. We also think by far the most efficient and cost-effective way to make your lead service line inventory publicly available is to put it on your website, regardless of the size of your utility or the number of customers that you serve. Now, there are some additional items in the LCRR, like I mentioned, sampling, notifications, things like that, that we have not configured the solution to support. However, those workflows can be very easily supported by just doing some configurations of core ArcGIS. So what are the benefits of doing a lead service line inventory? Well, what comes to everybody's mind immediately is compliance with the LCRR. I mean, you're not basically required to, you are required to. You have to do a lead service line inventory, as I mentioned, or be able to demonstrate the absence of lead services in your utility's service area. But beyond that, service line inventories are really valuable tools. They help you understand the scope of the problem. So, without an inventory, you have no idea how big of a problem lead service lines are in your service territory and really where they're a problem. And there's definitely geographic patterns that will emerge as to where lead service lines are a problem in typical water utility service areas. It's also a guide to help you prioritize your activities and target your replacement actions. You're going to use that inventory to help manage your replacement program. And again, you're going to use that inventory to inform the community about their risk of lead exposure. And it's also a way to show your ratepayers how you are taking action to safeguard their health. Now, as Alex and I talked to water utilities all around the country, from small rural water utilities to large urban water utilities, we kept seeing this common set of challenges around doing lead service line inventories. And the first one that we saw was that lead service lines or service lines in general are really a complicated thing to create a system to manage. They're a complicated really set of information, and that's because while we talk about them as lead service lines, and certainly the public at large tends to think about them as a single line, they're really complicated assets and they have multiple components to them. So typically a lead service line has or a service line in general, a water service line has both a public side and a private side. The public side is the responsibility, the property of the water utility. The private side is the property and the responsibility of the building owner. And those two lines meet typically at a curb stop or maybe a meter pit or a valve or something like that. And sometimes where those two lines meet is inside of the house, particularly in colder areas. Lastly, you may have some fittings along those lines that may contain lead, so like goosenecks or pigtails. So it's a fairly complicated piece of data, and it's hard for water utilities to custom design a system to manage this data. There's a lot of utilities that have a lack of documentation or documentation that's hard to access, that contain some information about service line material. So the tap card you see on the left of the slide is actually the tap card for my house, and it's basically unusable, right? So you cannot glean from that for the private side of my water connection really any useful information about the service for my house. We have other water utilities that don't actually have the records about what was installed on the private side, because those records are actually in a municipal building department, and oftentimes they are paper records. Of course, we're dealing with buried pipes, so you can't easily put eyes on these pipes to understand what the material is, and really visual confirmation is the ultimate source of truth, and that may require you to mobilize staff out into the field to, open curb stop boxes, or go into meter pits, or sometimes enter somebody's house to be able to visually confirm the materials. Well, progressive utilities can leverage technology to optimize your lead service activities and to help you safeguard community health and stay in regulatory compliance. And one of the ways that you can leverage technology is to deploy our free lead service line inventory solution. Now, what that solution enables you to do are these 5 primary workflows: to inventory your lead service lines and manage that inventory, to manage a lead service line replacement program, to track your compliance, share that lead service inventory with the public, and then tell your story to the public about how your utility is working to reduce the possibility of their exposure to lead. When you deploy the lead service line inventory solution, what you're really getting is a system, a complete system of apps that are designed to all work together to be able to do that inventory and manage the inventory. What you're getting is you're getting a lead service line inventory configuration for ArcGIS Pro. So this gives you a desktop GIS application that enables you to do high volume data edits. This is also where you're going to do some predictive analytics, which we do suggest that you do. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. We give a lead service line inventory web application, and that web editor application enables technicians at your utility with the appropriate permissions to be able to go and map your service locations and also to update service line materials. We're also providing a lead service line mobile editor configuration, and that's intended for field staff. So that enables field staff to GPS the location of services. It also enables field staff to do verifications and capture data right in the field when they're doing a material verification. We're providing a lead service line replacement manager web app, and that web app is tailored towards engineers that need to manage the utility's replacement activities. We're also providing a lead service line viewer web app that is a view-only application that allows anybody in the utility, again with the appropriate permissions, to be able to view any of your service line information and also be able to see where replacement activities are happening. We're providing a lead service line dashboard, and that's aimed at managers and executive directors that gives them a view into your compliance activities so that they can appropriately manage both your organization's inventory activities as well as your replacement activities to make sure that you're in compliance. And lastly, we're providing a lead safe community ArcGIS hub site. You can think of that ArcGIS hub site as a pre-configured website that is set up so you can easily modify it to tell your utility's story about how you're addressing lead services. Embedded in that website is a lead service line, excuse me, public viewer web application, and that's where you are exposing or sharing a subset of your lead service line inventory as an interactive map, right, real-time data out to the public. So it's a very simplified view for the public that allows them to understand in real time your lead service line inventory and interact with it. And this is all back-ended by ArcGIS Online. So this is a SaaS or a cloud-based deployment. Now we are working on making the solution available through ArcGIS Enterprise if you would like to use ArcGIS Portal, and we hope to be able to offer that option shortly.
So I'm going to cover, after the deployment of the solution, what you're going to see in your organization, and also I'm going to run through some of the apps to show how they work. So after deploying the solution, you're going to see these 19 items in a lead service line inventory folder in ArcGIS Online. So I can scroll down to show these. It's a combination of services, maps, apps, a dashboard, and also the hub site that Howard had mentioned. So to start, we're going to start with the lead service line viewer. So this is a view-only app. There is no editing taking place in this application. The first thing you may notice is the symbology. We're utilizing multi-attribute symbology to show both the utility side lead category and the customer side lead category on the same point. So if we look at the legend on the right, the left side of the circle is the utility side and the right side is the customer side. And there are 4 categories. The red is lead, yellow is galvanized requiring replacement, blue is non-lead, and gray is unknown. And those 4 categories were taken from the lead and copper rule revision, and 4 on each side. There's a combination of 16 different categories. Next, in the map, you may also notice on top of these symbols are these dots. So over here, we have it on the right side, which is the customer side. For this point, we have it on the left side, which is the utility side. It may appear on both sides or on neither side. And what those dots are representing is whether or not the material has been verified. So if there is a dot appearing on a specific side of the circle, that means it has not been verified. So once it does become verified and you update that attribute, that dot will disappear. Looking over on the left, we have a few filters to help prioritize work and to help filter out certain combinations of lead categories. So at the top, we have an unverified or unknown service line. So these are the service lines that you're going to want to prioritize because you have not verified the material or you don't know what the material is. So you can turn that on and it will filter out the map. Underneath that, we also have a lead categories filter, which for right now is set to lead on either side. And if we turn that on, now we're only seeing the service lines that have lead on either side or on both sides. So we can use a combination of these filters to help target the activity that we want to perform and also to prioritize which service lines we want to visit first. So this would be performed by the engineers or the operations manager, whoever is determining which service lines need to be replaced. This is also utilizing filters. So we have a replacement status filter that is set up with the 4, and you can see them on the right-hand side in the legend. We have these different replacement statuses. So we have a need replacement, which is what it's set to right now, doesn't need replacement, scheduled replacement, as well as it's been replaced. And so you can utilize the batch attribute editor that is also provided in the app to grab as many of these points as you would like if you want to schedule them. And so right now we have it set to needs replacement, and we can grab these three service lines that we know need to be replaced, and we can update them to scheduled replacement. And we could also give it a scheduling date. So maybe we're replacing these 3 months out, so we can change this to a 12. And we can also update the reason for replacement to be lead. And this is a very important field because this reason for replacement is being utilized in the dashboard, which I'll get to in just a minute. So we can click save on that, and you'll see that it has now disappeared from the map because it's filtered out. It is now scheduled to be replaced. And if we turn off the filter, we can see that it is now turned into a scheduled to be replaced yellow triangle. In the dashboard, this can be used to see high-level statistics of lead in the system. We have, going from left to right, lead and unknown service lines gauge. So the reason we've combined lead and unknown together is that unknown, according to the lead and copper rule revision, unknown is assumed to be lead until it is verified to not be lead. So that's why, going back to our lead service line viewer, it is important to know which materials have been verified and which ones have not been verified. And this is working against the total count of service lines in your system. We also have a count for unverified service lines, a count for unknown service lines, and then we have a couple of replacement statistics. The replacement statistic on the left is a percentage of replaced lead service lines over a 2-year rolling average. And that 2-year rolling average was also taken from the lead and copper rule revision, that if a water system is above the lead threshold, which I believe is 15 parts per billion, they need to replace 3% of those service lines on a 2-year rolling average. So that's where we get that number. And then we also have a total number of replaced lead service lines over time. Beneath them, we have graphs that support the statistics above. So we have a utility side lead categories, a customer side lead categories, and then we also have percentages of those replacement statuses that I just showed. And we also have the hub page that Howard had mentioned. So this hub page is completely customizable. So first I'll go through what we include, and then I'll show how to customize it. So out of the box, it's going to come with accounts for the utility side lead service lines, account for the customer side lead service lines, as well as the total number of replaced lead service lines. It also includes that public-facing map that Howard mentioned. And we've also simplified the symbology. So it's not using the multi-attribute symbology, which can be a little bit confusing for the public. We've simplified it to use single symbology. Beneath that, we've included some steps that the utility may be taking to reduce lead exposure in the system. And also, we provided some documentation on understanding the health issues with lead, as well as linking out to some more documentation if they want to explore that further. To customize the hub page, you would just click the edit button, and it will bring it into edit mode. You can change the theme of your hub page to match the theme of your organization, so you can change the colors. And you can also add, using this layout, you can add different elements to the map as well as delete certain elements from the map. So if I wanted to change the title, instead of lead safe community, just maybe want to call it lead in our community, you can change that. If you wanted to add a survey or a map, you could just drag them in and they will show up in the website. So for now, I'm going to pass it back to Howard for some implementation tips.
Thanks, Alex. All right, so as utilities have been deploying our lead service line inventory solution, we've gotten some really good questions, and we thought it would be helpful on this webcast to just cover a few of them because it will make your implementation easier. So one of the most frequent comments we've gotten back from water utilities is that they've noticed, and I'm sure you all have as well, that we are representing service lines in a different way in this solution. Remember, this solution is a fully self-contained system that's designed to do a lead service line inventory. And so we're managing the data a little bit differently than what you would expect with an asset-centric GIS. So in an asset-centric GIS, and by that I mean, a traditional water GIS implementation where you map every, asset that's part of your system, you would typically represent your service lines as one line, maybe two. If you have both the private and the public side of the line, you're going to have a curb stop, a meter, a tap, et cetera. Well, it's pretty cumbersome when it comes to doing a lead service line inventory to have to, touch all those different pieces of data and then report on them. So what we've chosen to do is to represent data differently in the solution and represent all of your services as simply a point. But it's been a little jarring for some folks that are used to that very asset-centric GIS. Now, the good news is you can pass data, and Alex is going to talk a little bit about that in a moment, between the lead service line inventory and really, any other implementation that you have of GIS or really any other business systems that you have as well that may also need to share information about the service lines. So just keep in mind that the lead service line inventory is designed to function as a standalone system. In fact, you do not have to be using ArcGIS as a system of record for your water asset data to get started. You can simply hit the deployment button and immediately start to use this as a standalone system. However, you can load data from your asset-centric representation into the system and also sync data between the system and any other system that you have that has information about your services in it. Also, and Alex did a really good job of explaining this, keep in mind, right, that while we're using those points for simplicity, and there's in fact some very sophisticated some work going on to symbolize them with these sort of split dots. And the split dots are a best practice that we actually observed a number of utilities that are very successfully using GIS now to manage their lead service replacement and programs and inventory programs. We basically adopted this symbology set because we're seeing, you know, other utilities use this very successfully. But what's really behind these simple points is this very, you know, well-designed data structure. And I think this is one of the real significant time savings or benefits of using the solution is you don't have to figure this out on your own. You know, instead, we've done the work to figure out what are the essential data elements that you need to include in a lead service line inventory for, you know, reporting and for actually, you know, doing the inventory and the field verification work and managing your replacement work, but you are able to extend this. It's very easy for you to add, you know, additional attributes or fields in here if there are other things that your utility wants to capture. But out of the box, there's this, behind those very simple points and those simple to use maps is this very rich data structure. You should also have noticed that there's multiple options for populating service line information, or, you know, there's overlap in what some of the apps do, and that's intentional because we want to give your organization the option to use the best apps to get the job done. So this ships with a lead service line inventory ArcGIS Pro configuration, and this is where you're going to import existing GIS service line data in. Alex is going to demo this to you. This is also where you can geocode your billing roster. Let's say that you have no existing service line information mapped. Well, the quickest way to get started is probably just take your billing roster and geocoding it to get all your customer points on the map. And once you do that, you can begin to move those to the appropriate location where services are. But all of your customers, of course, must have a service providing water to them. So it's a really quick way to get started. You're also going to use this app to digitize your service line locations, and you can use a variety of materials to do that. You know, CAD files, heads-up digitize, you know, whatever you want to do. You're also going to do predictive analysis, and we suggest that you do some predictive analysis, and ArcGIS Pro would be the place to do that. We're also giving that lead service line inventory web editor, and that's great for technicians who aren't GIS professionals to just give them a simple web app to go in and digitize line locations and update line materials. And lastly, we do have that mobile app for use in the field as well, and that's really designed for GPSing service line locations or recording verifications on the spot in the field. Now you can load existing service line data using ArcGIS Pro, and again, Alex is going to show this, and he's going to go a little deep on the demonstration of this. But we also think that there's some, you know, really good tradecraft in here. If you haven't seen anybody use ArcGIS Pro and the data loading tools before, Alex is going to demo those as well. But it's easy to get data from another system or from your asset-centric representation into this solution. And really important to understand, it's also easy to get data out of this and update another system, and that's because we've included fields for asset IDs and account IDs. So if you want to then sync data back out of this inventory solution and use it to update maybe your you know, your meter data or your CIS or your work order system or whatever it is. Now, if you do take the time to read the LCRR, there is some very good information there and really strong suggestions that you should be using predictive analysis, and we absolutely agree with that, to assume service line material types. So a few things to keep in mind. Nationally, lead services were banned from being installed after June 19, 1986. So if any service was installed after that date, it's very, you know, logical to assume that that is not a lead service. Now, of course, many individual communities banned the installation of lead services long before that national ban. So what you want to do is look to your local plumbing codes and understand when in your community the lead services were prohibited from being installed. Some potential analytic uses, well, certainly you could and should go get property records or building permits, because this is going to help you establish your likely service line installation dates. You can also cross-reference those, as I mentioned, with local plumbing regulations, and that's also going to help you establish likely lead or non-lead, and then you can use those assumed attributes, right, or those assumed descriptions so that you can identify services that are likely to be lead, you would identify those as assumed lead, and then you can use those as your high priority work to work against to do field verifications. Similarly, you can identify services that cannot possibly be lead because of their installation date as non-lead. And really what you should be using is this predictive analysis work to optimize your verification work, and then that's really also going to drive priority on your replacement activities.
So I do have my mobile device screen sharing up and running. So before getting into deployment and migrating your data into the solution, I can show a workflow using the mobile app. So right now we are looking at my phone. So we're going to focus on the point in the upper central part of the screen. It has an unknown utility side and a lead on the customer side, and both sides have not been verified. So if I'm a meter reader or if I'm a field technician out in the field and I notice that that the material has not been verified, I can open up the meter pit and look at both sides of the service line, and that I can do a visual verification of the material on either side. So we can click that point and we can now edit the attributes. So I noticed when I pop open the meter pit that both sides are actually lead. So I can update the material to lead. I can update, I'm not going to fill out every attribute in here, but I can now say that it's been verified and that the utility status is now going from unknown to lead. The customer side already says lead, but I can update the verification to yes, and the customer status is already lead, and I can also update the replacement status to needs replacement. So I can submit that, and you'll notice that the point has now changed from gray and red to red and red, and both those dots that were on top saying that they have not been verified have disappeared because it has now been verified. So I just wanted to show that workflow before moving on. So to deploy the solution in ArcGIS Online, you'll have a Chiclets button at the top near where your sign-in is. You can click the Chiclets button and open the Solutions app. The Solutions app is going to take you to our solutions page, and you're going to see all of our solutions listed out. We're going to want to search for lead, and it should be one of the first ones listed. You can click it. It's going to provide an overview explaining what the lead service line inventory solution is, and it's also going to link out to our documentation to get more information about our solution. Then you can click Get Now, and it gives you an opportunity to provide your spatial reference. So the data that I was just representing is in Illinois, so I can type in Illinois, and it's going to filter out to only show those with Illinois in the spatial reference. And then I would click my spatial reference and hit deploy. I'm not going to hit that right now, but it takes about 60 to 90 seconds to deploy into your organization, and you get all of those 19 items laid out in your organization. So now that you have the solution, you may want to migrate your data into it. Now, as Howard mentioned, this is a great standalone solution. You can deploy it and you can start collecting or adding service lines right out of the box. But if you do have your own data that you want to migrate in, I'm going to show a couple of techniques to get your data into the solution. So right now we're looking at some sample data, and all we're looking at is the lateral line, the service connection, which is the customer point, and a parcels layer that's behind it. And the object is that we want to combine all of this data or certain attributes from these features into a single point. So the single point that we're going to use is the service connection. So we want to be able to combine the utility side of the lateral line, the customer side of the lateral line, and the parcels to combine with the service connection to get the necessary data to migrate into the solution. So to do that, you would run a series of spatial joins. Now, a spatial join is a geoprocessing tool that comes with the core. It's a core geoprocessing tool, and all you have to do is search for it. And here's the spatial join, and you can run this 3 times to get your data into that point. But what I'm going to show, and I also recommend this, is setting it up as a model in Model Builder. And so this strings together the spatial joins so that all you have to do is run the tool once, and it will combine this data together so that you can migrate it in. So I've tried to separate these and label them to make it a little bit easier to understand. But basically what we're looking at is we're taking that lateral line, which is right here, and separating the customer side and the utility side into 2 separate layers. Once we separate those, we want to now combine them into one feature using the spatial join. So we're creating one lateral line out of the 2 different sides. From there, we want to combine that one lateral line with the service connection. And so we run a service connection spatial join. So now the information that we wanted to take from the laterals is now combined into that point. And then we run another spatial join with the parcels layer to get the necessary data from the parcels layer to join into that point as well. So I'm gonna run this, and we have the parameters already populated. You open the map. And so this is gonna add all of those spatial joins to the map at once, but we just wanna focus on this last one, which is a parcels join, which is this point right here that's laid on top of the older service connection. So I can open the attribute table and see that we now have attributes from the service connection, which is the account number. We have attributes from the lateral, which is the facility ID or the asset ID, the install date, material, diameter. So this is coming from the lateral. And then we also have the site so the address and the year that the structure on the property was built, which came from the parcels. So we were able to take attributes from 2 of the layers and combine them into one of the layers. So from there, now that we have all the information that we need in a single point, we can run the data loading tools. So data loading tools are found in Python Package Manager. And they would be in, if you have them installed already, they would be in your installed packages, and they're listed as DLT solutions. If you do not have them installed, you would go to your add packages and search for it. Now I've already installed them, so they're not gonna be listed in my add packages, but you would just search for it and it would be listed as DLT solutions. You would click install, restart Pro, and they would be listed in your toolboxes right here. So we have the data loading tools. They come with 4 different scripts. We're only gonna focus on create data loading workspace and execute data load. So the create data loading workspace, I already have it pre-populated. So I can bring that up. And what we're doing with the create data loading workspace is this is creating a source to target mapping in an Excel workbook. So we have our parcels join, which is what we just created. So that's the data from our source that's in the point. And we have the target, which is the feature service that we just deployed from the lead service line inventory solution in ArcGIS Online. We also have some options for predictive field matching, and you'll see this in just a second. This is able to take similar named fields from the source and target and match them up automatically, saving you the work to have to do that. And then you specify an output folder. Once you hit run, and it's pretty instant, you'll get a data loading workspace folder. So we're just gonna focus on the data mapping for now. And in the data mapping, I already have these open. We have, I have one this is how you'd see it out of the box after you click run. I also have one that's open, pre-filled out. So first we'll review the one. This is how you're gonna get it out of the box. It's already matched up the account ID and the address. Even though the address has a different name, it's called site address, it was able to match it up for you. But it's not perfect. It did not match up our facility ID for the utility side with the utility asset ID from the target. So you can just click, and the expression column allows you to go through all of the fields from your source to match it up to the target. We also have these lookup sheets, and it's already matched it up for us. And what the lookup sheets are referencing are these blue tabs down here at the bottom. And these blue tabs, and we'll look at material on the utility side for an example, they are matching up the domain codes from the source to the target. So on the left-hand side, we have the material codes for the domains from the source, and on the right-hand side, we have the codes for the target. And using the descriptions, has already been able to match up the text codes with the integer codes from the source to the target. So we have cast iron is CIS in the source. It's 83 in the target, and it was already able to match that up for us. So there's no work that we would have to do there. Going back to our mapping, we have a couple of fields that do not have an exact match, and they do not have a lookup sheet already assigned to it, and that's the source and the status. So the status is what we had seen in the app as those colors, the lead, unknown, galvanized requiring replacement, and non-lead. And the source is how we know that information. So that could be existing records, visual confirmation, test results, or that it's an assumption based on certain attributes. And we want to use the expression column. The expression column gives us the ability to write Python functions to be able to combine different attributes to determine what these attributes should be. And I'll show an example of that in Notepad++. So I'm not going to go into the full details of what these if statements are, but if we look at this top one, we are looking at calculate utility status. So that is calculating the utility lead category of the utility side. And it's using the material field, the install date, and the year that the structure on the property was built, and a combination of those three fields to determine whether or not it should be an unknown category, a lead category, a non-lead category, or galvanized requiring replacement. And it does the same thing down here with the source. It's using the material, the install date, and the year that the structure was built, a combination of those to determine whether or not it's existing records, so the material is already in your existing records, or you're using the install date or the year that the structure was built to assume whether or not there's lead on that property. So I can show a pre-filled version of this, and this is what it would look like when you're referencing those Python functions. So this is referencing what I just showed in Notepad++, and now we have the necessary matches from source to target filled out in our workbook. Back in Pro, we can now run the execute data load tool. And I will bring up our map this is from our deployed solution in ArcGIS Online. And I have this preloaded, and we can click, actually let me open the attribute table first, and we can show that there is no data yet. And I can click run. And this shouldn't take very long, especially since there's not too much data to go through. And then once it finishes running, you would just have to hit refresh. And now we have all of our data, and I can click refresh in the map, and we can see those points show up in the map. So looking through one of these examples, we could see that it was able to match up the material to be lead, and it also has, because there's a material, existing records. That's one of the functions that I just referenced. We have the install date, and we also have the category as lead. Galvanized pipe was matched up with galvanized pipe, and etc. So hopefully, this is a solution that you can use straight out of the box. But if you do want to migrate your data in, it should not be too difficult, especially if you look up use the data loading tools and use the documentation that comes with the data loading tools. There's some great documentation to show you different workflows on how to use the tools. So I will send it back to Howard to wrap up before taking questions.
Thanks, Alex. So while we're transitioning back to our last couple of slides, I just want to reiterate what Alex said, which is, we went a little deep in showing you data loading, but we thought it would be really useful to do that. However, this solution immediately works out of the box after that, 60 to 90 second automatic deployment. So it's ready to go, but you can certainly use ArcGIS Pro to get your existing data in. So as we wrap up today, just wanted to leave you with a few thoughts. What is that lead service line inventory designed to do? It's designed to help you streamline the creation and management of your lead service line inventory, help you optimize the replacement program using that up-to-date information to plan your replacement program and manage it. It's designed to help you comply with regulations, and specifically the LCRR, and certainly if there's any state specific regulations that you fall under, you can further configure that dashboard to show your progress towards those. And it includes the capability to share that lead service line inventory out with the public to inform them. And it also provides that pre-configured hub website that enables you to really tell your utility stories to your ratepayers about how you're taking action to safeguard your health. Now, we mentioned that you can go to solutions.arcgis.com to access the full catalog of all of our ArcGIS solutions, but you can also go to esriurl.com/lead to just get a shortcut right into the documentation for the lead service inventory solution, and you can also deploy it directly from there as well. So I just would like to thank you for your time, and I'll hand this over to Mariah.
And thank you all for joining us today. Take care.